So Jujutsu Kaisen, as everyone knows, came out today with another episode, and just like always, it feels like the animators and Gege Akutami himself are competing to make every new episode and stretch of content better than the last. Like legit, we got Toji vs Megumi and Sukuna vs Jogo just last week, 7 days ago to be exact, but the animators was like, nah, we gotta level it up with this next one, cause this episode right here was nothing short of pure cinema. It's not even like last episode wasn't up there as one of the greatest things to come out in recent anime. If you lot saw my video on it, you'd know I rated it crazy high. It's just that this latest content is on that next level somehow, some way, and when a 22-minute episode feels like 5 minutes, you know you just watched some gas. And for me personally, this episode was simply peak, especially when you break down how incredible each part of the production was. The animation itself was obviously perfect and as crazy as it gets, but also the directing, soundtrack, that different color palette they used, which made everything look sinister as hell. It was the full package in every sense and lived up to the hype this content could offer. This man Sukuna already got that certified title of being the biggest menace in Jujutsu Kaisen, but he had to truly prove it right here. With Jogo, he was barely using any curse techniques up until that conclusion. He was pretty much just straight hands and he won that fight with no difficulty. But in this scrap right here, he showed a slight taste of what he can truly do, whilst also showing why this arc is called what it is, why it's named the Shibuya incident, and here he gave us one of the coldest fights in the series and also one of the most gut-wrenching parts of this story altogether. He's a one-of-a-kind villain, and despite being in the show for barely 2.5 episodes, he just changed everything dramatically and gave us one of the most generational runs from any character in such a short time frame. But putting Sukuna aside for a second, what on earth did Megumi have cooking? Before this moment, there was a bit of foreshadowing and background information related to Megumi's 10 Shadows technique, however nothing in the slightest that substantiates the monster that he summoned here. Megumi, who at this point was inches close to death, set up a ritual whereby him and that annoying guy Haruta have to exercise the Shikigami placed before them. Megumi obviously knew he couldn't touch the Shikigami as it's never been exercised by any user of the 10 Shadows technique in the past, so it was essentially his trump card to take this guy Haruta out. He hit that smirk and said, handle this one for me, and although it's kinda crazy for Megumi right here as he's involved in this impossible task, seeing Haruta get pressured like this was too satisfying. But of course Sukuna had to get involved after he noticed Megumi summon him, and he saved Haruta here, getting into it again with another opponent right after his fight with Jogo against the strongest Shikigami in all of Jujutsu Kaisen, the Divine General Mahoraga. And I think it's fair to say that this was very easily the most chaotic fight in the entire anime. The build up, sinister vibe, and the atmosphere itself all pointed to this being another crazy brawl just like the one with Jogo, but this was something else entirely. You had the absolute demon himself Sukuna, who's already proven to be one of the 2 strongest in the verse, against this monster Shikigami that's abilities pretty much break the rules of the power system altogether. 2 of the most busted entities in Shibuya right now are going head to head, and as expected, it was pure madness. When Sukuna is involved, just know it's smoke from the get-go, and with this fight, Sukuna and the Shikigami was dishing out their attacks almost instantly. There was no space to wait. Sukuna had to pack this monster up in order to save Megumi, but unlike Jogo, this opponent was a beast, chasing this mad Sukuna down wherever he went. It was straight up relentless, and for a while it felt like an unstoppable force because of that crazy durability and busted curse technique that allowed it to tank Sukuna's hits. We've only seen it a few times, but Dismantle is a ridiculous move that can cut pretty much anything, and you can clearly see its effects on the wall and to the Shikigami itself. But as stated, once the Shikigami Mahoraga adapts to a technique, it's just over. And even if you are the strongest thing ever like Sukuna here, the technique gets severely nerfed, and as the fight progresses, you slowly understand why the Shikigami is stated to be the strongest of them all. But even whilst the Shikigami Mahoraga is looking more and more broken as the fight continues, the same can be said for the King of Curses himself. Mahoraga and Sukuna's first exchange ends up with both of them thrown in different directions, and peep how this man Sukuna pulls up to the scene again. Bro comes through with the 2-piece popcorn meal, casually explaining Mahoraga's sword ability that could have ended him. He gradually takes the fight more seriously as it goes on, but that new piece of content that wasn't actually in the manga was funny as fuck, and I'm glad they included it, as it shows yet again how much of a menace this guy actually is. He's not pressured at all, and if anything, he finds this to be entertaining, as they were going back and forth with different blows, truly boxing all throughout this scrap. The fight was wild, and each counterattack thrown was more ridiculous than the last, as the scale of everything just kept on getting bigger and bigger. Multiple structures collapsing because of these destructive abilities isn't nothing new at all, seeing as the Jogo fight had a ton of that, especially when the whole meteor dropped down. But with this Sukuna fight here, literally everything was tumbling around them, and at one point it felt like Shibuya was just flipped on its head. The scale of this is nowhere near what I thought when I first read this part in the manga, but the animators went insane portraying this to us here with all the different shots of Sukuna and Mahoraga. One scene would have Sukuna's slashing technique slice the entire block, and another would show a giant Mahoraga tossing Sukuna across the city. The back and forth went on for basically the entire fight, and each segment was somehow crazier than the last. As I said before, Mahoraga was unlike anything we've seen before, and his ability to adapt to anything even surprised Sukuna, who was having some trouble taking him down. The slashing attacks, which although destroyed half of Shibuya, wasn't stopping this monster from backing down, and upon noticing this, Sukuna used the move we've all been waiting for, and my god, this part of the fight was beyond gas and made me love this moment even more than I did before. Domain expansions are always described as the pinnacle of Jujutsu and basically an untouchable technique once mastered. Earlier in the arc, Gojo used it as an all or nothing technique that managed to save thousands, and Sukuna used it for the exact opposite. Even though Sukuna's main goal was to destroy Mahoraga, he pretty clearly wanted to make do with his statement to kill every human in Shibuya, and with this divine technique, literally everything in a 140-meter radius held smoke. Sukuna unlocked his domain without a barrier because he simply can, and the narrator described it as an artist painting a masterpiece not on the canvas but on thin air, and the technique slammed Mahoraga and eviscerated every human within range of the technique. Just when you think this man Sukuna can't get more broken, he goes ahead and does something ridiculous like this. Gojo and him are simply levels ahead of everyone else, and Mahoraga, despite being busted as hell, is no different. It's wild how JJK throws you the most epic scene you've ever watched and right after will completely break you, and this happened right here with the aftermath to this battle. Sukuna's evil, just like his power, knows no bounds, and Yuji had to face the brunt of what Sukuna caused, putting every single casualty on himself to blame. The whole 2-minute segment of Shibuya crumbling and people getting erased from Sukuna's domain was all Yuji's burden to bear. The entire scene in the manga, despite beating my ass, was straight up amazing, and the raw emotion shown here along with that completely blank expression was done justice in the anime. Yuji, whose entire existence and reason for being a Jujutsu sorcerer was to stop curses like Sukuna, the biggest threat to mankind, from killing, and he failed in that regard and put all the blame on his shoulders alone. It's very clear that Sukuna is at fault for all these tragic events, but Yuji just doesn't see it that way, and all that Sukuna done completely broke him. Got my man puking and everything. Sukuna really proved why this arc is called the Shibuya incident here, and no doubt Yuji will overcome this giant setback and fulfill his role as a Jujutsu sorcerer because he's just that guy. Whoever's in charge of the soundtrack is so foul for putting the opening behind Yuji's breakdown. I was not trying to hit specials whilst Yuji was going through that, but the different shots of how current Shibuya is looking was a dope way to end off this event. JJK once again peaks with its latest episode, and from start to finish it was generational. I called last week's episode the best stuff JJK has put out, and I think it's fair to say that this episode here is on that same tier, if not surpassed it. The production was insane and the animators snapped with everything. There was a bunch of talented animators working on this one, and I can only recall Vincent, who I know worked on some crazy One Piece episodes, but all the animators cooked as well. Shibuya is getting into its prime, and each episode from here on out is just as wild, so prepare for some more peak content. This and last week's episode was such a treat to watch, and I still can't wrap my head around how great the animation and overall production is despite the bad scheduling from Mappa's end. My only gripes with the episode is that some parts felt a little unfinished, but I'm sure it will get adjusted in the Blu-ray version anyway. JJK is on that streak of cooking, and I have no doubt that the next big fight will look gas as well. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover in this video. Freaking peak episode yet again, and Sukuna proved once again why he's him in the most atrocious way possible. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed, and I would greatly appreciate if you could hit that like button for me as well. I'm sick of calling JJK peak at this point, but I have a feeling that word is going to creep up on me next week as well. Thanks for watching all the way through, and I'll catch you in my next vid. Peace.